says, instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but of God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves a treasure here on earth, so that when they die, everybody can look and say, man, look at all the cool stuff he had. Oh no, that's not in there. Wow. It says, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future. That's not retirement. He's not talking 401k. He is talking about all of eternity. Remember that line? It goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. That's the future. Do we live for that, or do we live for now? If we want to live for that, we've got to understand God instructed us to be rich in generosity, to be giving of what God's blessed us with. And so that takes us to a quote by C.S. Lewis. When we don't give, we rob ourselves. When we settle for half of what God's blessed us with, for half of what God wants to do with us, when we hold on to things, and C.S. Lewis, who did great, wonderful things for the church and in his writings, he said, we are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition, when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slum because we cannot imagine what it is meant by the offer of a holiday at sea. We are far too easily pleased. It's the same truth that applies to us today. We are far too easily pleased. We are far too easily pleased with the things around us when we could be given more and blessed with more and go beyond what we ever thought we could do. We're far too easily pleased with what's in our sight right here, and we're comfortable with that. We don't give beyond what we think we can give. We hold on to what we have and say, man, it sure is nice right here. That's not why God blesses us, and that takes us to the last principle. And we're going to flip over to 2 Corinthians 8. In 2 Corinthians 8, we see a church here that excels in giving. And Paul is writing here about the Macedonian church, and it's 8, I'm going to read 1 through wherever I stop. It says, now, brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God which has been given in the churches of Macedonia, that in a great ordeal of affliction, their abundance of joy and their deep poverty overflowed in the wealth of their liberty. For I testify that according to their ability and beyond their ability, they gave of their own accord, begging us with much urging for the favor of the participation in the support of the saints. And this, not as we had expected, but they first gave themselves to the Lord and to us by the will of God. In his letter to this church, the Corinthians, the Apostle Paul goes to a church in Macedonia and he speaks about how they give. And it says that in their great ordeal of affliction, this was a people group that didn't have very much. In their great ordeal of affliction, it says they gave with abundance of joy, and in very deep poverty overflowed the wealth of their ability. They gave to their ability. They gave what was required of them. They gave all that they could. But he says that they went above that and they gave beyond their ability. And you want to know what going and giving above and beyond your ability does? It's when you quit adding it up and you do what God calls you to do. You quit adding up the hours in the day saying, oh no, if I do that, I won't have time to watch that CSI rerun. If I go up there and I participate in this ministry or that meeting, I won't have time to do that. When they gave beyond their ability, they quit counting on their fingers going, oh, we ran out of money right there. They quit doing those things. They gave above and beyond what they had, and they trusted God. And you know what God provided for those people in Macedonia? And He used them out of their great poverty. He used them to give beyond what they could fathom. We have to understand that as a people group, we no longer need to live and be satisfied with the norm around us. Do you know that in the New Testament, nowhere does it say to give 10%? It talks about tithe, and a tithe represents 10%. I'm gonna switch from tithe balance to church, and I'm going to talk just about money right now. Tithe, it means a 10%. That's what tithe means. But nowhere in the New Testament are you instructed to give 10%. Does that shock some of you? I figured some old lady sitting there going, no, it's in there. I know it's in there. Sorry, I think I'm an old lady. Some old man. Look, son, I'm pretty sure that's in there. Nowhere does it say that we need to give the 10%. That's the starting of what God's called us to give. I truly believe, and if you look in the Old Testament, they were required to give in the Old Testament to give anywhere from 10% to up to 33 and a third percent, 33.33%. When it came to New Testament giving, the Apostle Paul says that you give according to your ability. And so in our own giving, when Christ came and He preached in the New Testament, did He ever go back and say, yeah, I know we said this in the Old Testament, but I'm going to lower the bar a little bit. I'm going to lower the bar. We don't have to live that way anymore. Did He ever do that? Let's look at the Sermon on the Mount. Let's talk about when He talks about adultery. He says if anybody ever committed adultery, don't raise your hand. Just kidding. Adultery. Adultery was the act of having a physical relationship. When Christ came and He taught, did He lower the bar or raise the bar? He raised the bar. Christ, when He came, He took it beyond the physical act. He said, if you have lust in your heart, you have committed adultery in your heart. Right? Murdering people. Did Christ lower the bar or raise the bar? He said, oh, it's okay. Murder all you want. No. Christ said that if you have anger in your heart towards somebody, you have already murdered them in your heart. You've committed murder in your heart. So are we going to go with that Christ, when He came, although He doesn't mention a tithe or giving or anything like that, are we going to go with He lowered the bar or raised the bar? Raised it. Don't point down back there in the back. There's hecklers everywhere in the church. I'm going to go with He raised it. God probably holds us to the same standard He held His chosen people in the first time. And I believe that if you're going to give, you've been instructed to give of your first fruits on the front end of things, and you give a 10% of your income. I've never said that from this stage, but that's a godly principle to have. If you come to the financial peace class we did last year, Dave Ramsey says that you got to quit paying God on the back end and you have to start tithing on the front end, because if you always wait to pay God till the end, you'll never have enough to pay Him. Everything else will rob you from getting to pay Him. So God gets paid on the front end, and Visa, MasterCard gets paid on the back end. Who's more important in your life, Visa, MasterCard, or God? And so that's what He instructed us to do. And it goes on to say that some people say, well, I'm going to start giving, in Randy Alcorn's book, these are not my words, he said, I'm going to start giving 5%. You know, that's a good place to start. And hey, if you're not giving anything, that's a great place to start. But Randy Alcorn says, that's like saying I used to rob 6 banks a week, and I'm only going to rob 3 now. You're only quitting and doing half as much as what you were doing. You have to understand that we must be extremely, extremely sensitive to what God wants from us. If we're going to be sold out and broke for Him, we must be willing to turn loose of whatever it is He's blessed us with. Whether it's your time, whether it's your talents, whether it's your treasure. And so those 6 principles right there, those 6 principles, the Macedonian church, they believed it, and out of their affliction they gave that. And principle number 6, the last thing that we have is God prospers me not to raise my standard of living, but to raise my standard of giving. I'll say it again. God does not prosper me to raise my standard of living so I can have the bigger house, the bigger ranch, and the nice new truck with the big fancy wheels. He raises me. He prospers me so that I can raise my standard of giving. There are people out there that live, and it baffles me, that live off 50%, 85%, and 95%. They give that much of their income, and they live on the other. They have reached a standard of living where they have drawn a line and saying, this is good for us, this is where we're going to live, and they give the rest. So whatever blessing, whatever increase that happens to them, they give. And it amazes me, and it humbles me, and it baffles me that people are willing to do that for God. And so, I want to challenge you as a church that these 6 principles are principles to live by. And like I said, I think they're great principles, and that's why I preach them. And so I'm going to go through them one last time, and I'm going to leave you with a final thought. Principle number 1 is God owns it all, and I'm His manager. Principle number 2 is my heart always goes where I put God's money. Principle number 3, heaven, not earth, is my home. Number 4, I should live not for the dot, but for the line. Number 5, giving is the only antidote to materialism. And number 6, God prospers me not to raise my standard of living, but to raise my standard of giving. When you look at your life, if you're given the chance to lay on your deathbed and you get to reflect on the life that you have, what will you have thought about it? Very few people are given this opportunity, but there was a man by the name of Alfred Nobel. Anybody know him? Alfred Nobel, in 1888, he was a Swedish chemist who made his fortune inventing and producing dynamite. He reads the headlines of a paper one day that say, "The merchant of death is dead." What was wrong with the picture was that obituary that was wrote about him was actually his brother who had died. And so Alfred Nobel, in his life, got to see what the world around him thought about him. Because some editor got mixed up, he got to read their views of the life that he lived while he was still here. And Alfred Nobel went on after that day, and he decided to use his wealth to change his legacy, because the merchant of death, he had sold a product and made millions of dollars off a product that killed others. And he knew that's what he was going for when he sold it. And so when Alfred Nobel finally passed away, he left over $9 million. Remember, this is the 1800s. He left over $9 million. For who? Anybody ever heard of the Nobel Peace Prize? For people that do good acts towards humanitarian causes. He changed his legacy. Why did he change his legacy? Because he had the opportunity to see what the world thought about him while he was still alive. 5 minutes after you die, it will be too late to look back on your life and say, "Man, I wish I'd have done that for God. Man, I wish I would have given more time helping the needy in my area." It breaks my heart if you knew as a community how many people were in need in our school districts. The kids that come to us, we have a Ponder Cares for Kids deal that we're fixing to do, that we do with the Baptist church and the Methodist church in town. And we adopt kids and when we get them Christmas presents, you'd be amazed at how many kids come in. I volunteer some at the elementary school, and you would be amazed at the need of kids that will run up to you and hug you just because they get attention. Because they don't get it anywhere else. 5 minutes after you die, you will no longer have the opportunity to change that. But now you do. Now you're still sucking it. Anybody ever seen the movie Schindler's List? Mr. Schindler, sucking his last breath, who had spent his life buying Jews from Nazi Germany. Spending his fortune and his wealth to buy them out of slavery. And he looks at his car and his gold pen. And before he dies, he has remorse. Because he knows that he could have done more. Is that how you want to go? That's not how I want to go. I want to go all out. I probably shouldn't say it. Balls to the wall. Pedal to the metal. Knowing that I gave everything I had to God and I left it all out there on the table. I trusted Him with everything that I had on this earth. Is that how you want to go? Or 5 minutes after you die, you want to look back and go, I wish I'd done this. Because God, in His infinite mercy and wisdom, loves us. He blesses us with everything that we have so that we can serve Him. He doesn't need us. He doesn't have to have us. But He chooses to use us. Isn't that awesome? Let's pray.